各位山友大家好啊！見大家傾完偈，又放一個 break 翻嚟咧，面容都眼睛都多咗笑容啊，眼睛都會笑嘅。我見大家好似識咗啲新朋友，都開心咗，又着入咗，呢度都充滿咗 energy 咁啊！咁我哋今日咧都講好多咧做社會實驗啦，亦都講社會創新啦。喺做呢啲實驗啊創新嘅時候咧，都成日講咧，其實連結唔同嘅人啊好重要。有陣時話咧，一個人可以行得好快，但係咧一班人可以一齊行得好遠。而一班人咧更加重要咧，係可以嚟自唔同嘅背景啦，有唔同嘅經驗啦、唔同嘅睇法啦、唔同嘅智慧咧，大家可以多啲嘅交流。頭先咧嗰短短嘅一個工作坊嘅環節咧，都俾大家做咗呢個咁樣嘅親身經歷，都係一個親身嘅實驗，就係點樣去連結一啲我哋叫做好 unusual 嘅 connection， 去連結一啲同你好唔一樣嘅人。我哋都覺得，咦，其實與其淨係講，不如都等大家去親身經歷一下啦。咁相信有咗你哋頭先嘅體驗咧，我哋接住落嚟咧，再去聽我哋幾位講者嘅分享嘅時候咧，大家可能會有多啲嘅共鳴或者初步嘅理解嘅咁啊。咁啊，去到今日我哋嘅呢一個環節咧，我哋叫做 creating unusual connection。我哋點樣去穿梭一啲唔同視覺之間，我哋有唔同嘅一啲出發點，可能我哋都有唔同嘅一啲嘅睇法、唔同嘅經驗。我哋點樣可以互相理解、互相明白，甚至係一齊走上一條創新嘅路咧？咁啊，今日我哋好開心咧，邀請到3位嘅朋友咧，同我哋去一陣間做啲嘅分享同埋對話。咁我逐一邀請佢哋啦。首先咧，第一位咧就係賽馬會創不同社會創新實驗室經理區婉柔女士 Hermione。咁啊 Hermione 咧加入咗 Social Lab 一段時間啦，咁啊曾經都參加過好多咧唔同跨界別嘅共創項目，咁同政府啦、社區嘅居民啦，同埋一啲咧唔同嘅持份者咧都有交流嘅。頭先啊，可能大家喺出邊都睇到啦 ，Social Lab 都有做過好多唔同嘅實驗啊，包括街道啊、公園啊、圖書館啊等等嘅一啲唔同嘅實驗。一陣間咧 Hermione 可以同我哋介紹多啲嘅。咁啊，除咗本地嘅講者之外咧，我哋都今日好開心啦，邀請到咧嚟自英國嘅 Social Innovation Exchange 嘅行政總裁 Louise Purford 女士。我哋有請 Louise。Social Innovation Exchange 咧係一個連結全球嘅一個我哋叫做嘅一個嘅機構啦。推動咧係世界各地唔同嘅背景嘅，包括係政府、基金會、商界一啲唔同嘅社創嘅機構、慈善嘅組織，大家一齊咧去跨地域，亦都跨唔同嘅領域咧去合作、去交流嘅。咁啊，Louise 陣間咧都有好多嘅豐富嘅經驗咧，可以同我哋分享下點樣推動大家創新領域嘅一啲發展咁啊。咁最後咧，我哋都想邀請咧，就係嚟自明愛莫張瑞勤社區中心高級督導主任冼超恒先生 Benjamin 咧本身係一個社工嚟嘅，咁但係咧我哋今日見佢咧，佢都係一個好特別嘅身份，即係做得好似就係好似一個 business 人咁，但係佢又唔係喎，佢係一個咧好我叫做咧好有經驗、好亦都好特別嘅一個社會創新嘅一個先行者啊！佢推動咧好多社區發展嘅計劃啦，亦都好多咧跨部門啊、跨領域啊、跨機構嘅合作啦，就真係唔係淨係一個社會服務嘅行業嘅。咁佢嘅社會創新嘅項目咧都涵蓋好多唔同嘅層面嘅喎，好似一啲嘅保育啦、關注基層嘅生活空間啦，或者關注一啲勞動友善啊，甚至唔同嘅社區嘅一啲發展等等咁啊。咁啊都係有好豐富嘅一啲嘅經驗。一陣間可以同我哋分享，3位都係嚟自好唔同嘅背景。喺呢一度，我哋喺台上面呢度已經有個 unusual 嘅 connection 發生緊啦，咁啊，我哋一陣間對話當中咧，又再同大家咧喺呢一個場地度咧互相去連結咁啊。咁啊，我哋咧先會開始咧，就係3位咧都會去分享下佢哋嘅一啲嘅機構嘅背景啦，佢哋做緊啲咩啦，同埋佢哋點樣去睇 unusual connection 呢樣嘢嘅咧，會講一個小故事去先開始。咁然後咧，我哋之後咧都會有啲嘅對談，同埋咧都希望同現場嘅朋友咧可以有啲交流Q&A， 甚至可以傾下偈，好似我哋頭先喺度咁樣，大家我哋 casual 傾下偈嘅咁。咁我哋首先邀請 Hermione 同我哋分享下佢嘅工作。
多謝 Tracy。好，大家好，我係 Social Lab Team 嘅 Hermione 啦。咁今日咧，我想同大家一齊去反思同埋分享一下咧，到底世界上存唔存在同溫層呢？ 咁2018年啦，我作為一個行多步實驗室嘅團隊成員 Lab 去參與咗 Social Lab 呢個 process 之後，亦都好開心咧，係加入咗 Social Lab 作為一個同事啦。咁開展咗我自己嘅 Social Lab 之旅。我本身咧以往係做城市規劃出身嘅，咁亦都好習慣同唔同背景人一齊合作。但係 Social Lab 俾到我嘅經驗咧係更加豐富嘅。咁方才啦，大家都可以聽到上一節 Kelly 所分享，喺每一個 lab 入邊咧，我哋都會進入社區啦，同當地居民傾偈，了解佢哋嘅故事，再從中構思新點子咧，去落地實行，收集意見嘅。咁我陣間會再講多少少一個實在嘅例子啦。咁喺呢個過程當中咧，我一直都好高興咧，就係遇到好多唔同嘅志同道合嘅同路人，一啲合作伙伴啦，同埋好願意同我哋分享共創嘅街坊。但係咧，亦都令我去深深咁反思，就係到底同溫層是否存在呢？即使我哋係志同道合嘅伙伴，有相同嘅願景，但係亦都會發現好多時候每個人都有唔同嘅諗法、唔同嘅觀點同立場。但係呢個係咪一個問題呢？我覺得唔係，調翻轉咧，呢個咧正正係共創嘅美好之處，就係唔同嘅人行埋一齊，唔同嘅專業、唔同嘅背景、唔同嘅創意，點樣走到一齊共創呢？而當中咧，我覺得最需要嘅一樣嘢咧，就係我哋必須要有一個方法。Social Lab 咧好重視同理心，作為我哋嘅核心價值。頭先 Kelly 都有提到，我哋點樣係進入街坊唔同嘅生活嘅時段啦，去同佢哋傾偈。咁而呢個亦都正正係咧，我哋呢套方法學入邊嘅重中之重，去理解同埋建立一個共創同埋交流嘅平台。咁我今日有3個點咧，係我好想分享。當我哋去建立一個 unusual connection 時候，我發現嘅最重要嘅一啲我個人嘅經驗啦。咁第一樣咧就係揾到一個適合嘅渠道同埋環境去交流。我會用行多2步實驗室咧，去再 elaborate 多少少我嚟緊分享嘅呢3個點嘅。咁喺行多2步實驗室入邊啦，我哋喺深水埗東沙道街附近有6間中小學嘅街區咧，去進行一個街道嘅實驗，希望咧透過social lab 嘅 process 咧，去令到小朋友啦、老人家啦都可以行得更加安全、更加好玩。咁喺呢個過程當中咧，我哋發現老友記咧其實好難喺一個陌生嘅環境入邊咧去解釋佢日常嘅生活。相反啦，當我哋行入社區，跟住老友記一齊去行嘅時候咧，佢就會同我哋講呢個位咧，我平時就成日喺度坐嘅，甚至團隊咧會攞埋一張凳帶住出去 shadow 呢班老友記去揾到一個合適嘅地方，就打開張凳坐低傾偈。喺呢個過程當中咧，正正係顯示咗其實揾到一個適合嘅環境同埋氣氛，等街坊啦、唔同背景嘅持份者可以暢所欲言咧，其實咧喺成個過程嘅階段入邊嘅重中之重。咁當我哋坐低咗開展咗一個對話之後咧，我覺得第二樣好緊要嘅我一直提醒自己就係去理解諗法背後嘅諗法，亦即係話咧唔好係當對方同你講佢中意或者唔中意，咁你就停留喺呢度啦。喺我哋個 lab 入邊啦，咁因為涉及好多街道上面嘅實驗啦，咁我哋都同運輸署咧係就住成個 lab 都有一個合作嘅。咁過程當中咧都聽到好多唔同嘅部門啦，點樣睇我哋啲創新嘅點子。例如咧，當我哋想申請將東沙道街啦封路做3日嘅臨時行人專用區嘅時候咧，好多時候第一下咧會聽到嘅就係都唔係我哋平時嘅 protocol 可以做到嘅嘢喎。咁我哋都幫你一齊再諗諗啦，但係好似都有啲困難喎。咁我哋會唔會就停喺呢個位呢？我覺得作為 social lab 嘅同事同埋我哋嘅跨界別嘅團隊成員呢，我哋有一樣嘢就係跨越咗呢個。佢話唔好，於是我哋就停低啦。調翻轉咧，我哋去理解佢背後其實佢諗緊啲乜嘢。例如原來有一個部門同我哋講話呢條街咧，其實係一個緊急出入口嚟嘅。咁所以咧唔可以有任何喺地面上面嘅裝置。咁而學校咧亦都同我哋講其實我哋平時星期5放學之後咧會有校車出入喎。咁如果你封咗條街，啲小朋友點算呢？咁呢個 moment 咧。當我哋去發揮同理心啦，去企喺對方嘅角度一齊去諗嘅時候咧，我唔會去 blame 佢話你哋有冇搞錯啊？咁麻煩，等我哋試下啲新點子啊嘛，你試下有啲 flexibility 咯。調翻轉咧，當我代入佢哋，同佢哋一齊去諗原來我哋可以點樣做嘅時候咧，我哋咧就會一齊去發揮個創意，突破個限制。喺 頭先講呢個行多兩步實驗室嘅臨時行人專用區例子入邊啦，我哋最終咧將好多喺地面嘅installation 啦，同埋一啲裝置咧，最後咧變成咗喺地下嘅。你見到咧，其實小朋友咧而家有啲跑道俾佢哋跑啦，或者咧係有一啲跳飛機可以等佢哋去玩。咁亦都咧係同學校咧一齊夾咗一段時間咧，咁我哋喺校車出入嘅時候咧，我哋就會拉起一條臨時嘅風帶，令校車咧可以喺一個指定嘅範圍入邊咧係進出嘅。咁喺呢啲嘅都係一啲好少少嘅例子啦，但係咧最後咧係令到唔同嘅持份者啦、唔同嘅無論小朋友啦、家長啦，定抑或係學校同埋我哋同埋相關嘅政府部門咧，都去理解到呢個創意到底可以點樣去實行。咁我諗陣間會講多少少啦，但係即係想用一個少少嘅行多兩步實驗室個人嘅例子啦，去分享其實喺成個過程當中，當我哋抱住同理心去進入一個社區，去同唔同持份者交流嘅時候，冇前設，去設身處地咁樣理解佢哋好真誠嘅一個對話咧，其實會幫助到我哋咧去揾到原來唔同人嘅諗法背後嘅原因，然後咧再從限制入邊咧去揾到創意嘅。咁如果你要叫我講一句 social lab 教咗我啲咩咧，咁我會話就係同大家做朋友啦。好，咁陣間同大家講多啲我哋做朋友嘅經歷啦。咁時間就交翻俾謝謝 Tracy。
好多謝Hermione，佢好快咧就即係分享咗佢對於點樣去連結一啲唔同嘅人咧嘅一個出發點啊，好重要嘅價值啦、態度啦，同埋當中呢一啲嘅方法咁樣嘅。咁我哋聽咗佢本地嘅經驗嘅累積啦，我哋好快咧都想聽下咧一啲國際嘅一啲觀點同埋經驗。我哋去到Louise 係啦，佢喺 Six 嘅經驗啊，真係去做遊走，甚至唔同國家、唔同地域嘅呢啲唔同持份者，又點樣去連結大家啦？我哋請 Louise 分享下佢嘅經驗。
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Hermione. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me. I am so happy to be here in Hong Kong and to have an opportunity to talk with you both amazing people about such a, I think, important topic. My apologies that my Cantonese has not yet improved. Every time I come to Hong Kong, I think I will learn. It's not so simple. So thank you for bearing with me. If anyone doesn't understand, if I talk too quickly, just wave and I will stop. So happy to be here, as I said, and it's a real pleasure to be able to follow Hermione. We've followed, watched, observed, learnt from the Social Lab team for many years now, and I think the last point about empathy is something that I think is a theme that goes through all of our perspectives, despite telling very different stories. So it's a really important message, I think, that everyone should leave with, whatever kind of social change work that you're doing. Let me just tell you a little bit more about me and my organisation and what we do. And this topic of making unusual connections is what we do every single day. And I know we're going to talk about what unusual means to us in a bit more detail, but I think there is a connection between the word unusual and innovation and diversity and experimentation and all of the things we talked about in the last session. So this is Six, and what we believe in is the power of exchange for good. And we don't mean exchanging with people who are the same as us. We mean exchanging different ideas, diversity of thought, and different ways of doing things. That for us is what a valuable exchange is. And so you can see that's what drives us. We believe in people, and we support people and organizations to do social change work more effectively. So we both do field building activities, which is what we call making sure there is enough funding available for doing amazing work like this, helping philanthropic foundations take more risks, which is not something they are naturally very good at, I might say, helping governments create the right policy environment, creating the right kind of language to do this work. So this is what we call our field building work, making the environment ready for innovation to happen in terms of societal needs. And then the second part of our work, we work with individual organizations to help them respond more quickly and more effectively to the challenges that we face going forward. So we provide advisory support. We're a critical friend. We kind of hold the hands of organizations who are trying to do things differently. And we're really driven by three things. One, social innovation. We need new ways of doing things. Serene said in the last session, you know, one of the first signs of madness is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for a different result. This is exactly what we think about the need for innovation, to do things differently. If you want to change the education system or have more effective healthcare or better lives for the elderly or the disadvantaged, we need to do something differently. We learned this about climate change, about health pandemics. Doing the same thing is not going to work. So innovation really drives everything we do. The second thing is cross-sector. So we believe diversity is what is at the heart of all innovation. In order to do things differently, you need to spark different kinds of thoughts, and you need to get new ideas, new experiences. You need to learn from different types of people. And they may be in a different sector to you, but they may not. They may be in different places in the world to you, they may not. They may be sitting right next door to you. You don't know yet. So it's about having an open mindset. But I think in order to solve the challenges that we face, we do need people who are different. And quite often, they do come from different sectors. And then the third thing that drives us is being global. We don't think that one country has all the answers. The UK certainly doesn't, where I live. Hong Kong certainly doesn't. But together, we can, or at least we can learn from each other and get new answers together. And so global is what drives all of our work. So that's a little bit about SIX. But it really is also what Unusual Suspects is for us. And I'm actually going to tell you a story. The person that you can see on that side of the picture is someone that's all familiar to you, probably. Miss Ada Wong. And this is a picture of her at one of our events in 2010, so 13 years ago. Think about where you all were 13 years ago and what you were doing. Probably something very different. And the person on the other side, who I've carefully drawn a nice red circle around, is a woman called Chris Stigaloff. Does anyone know Chris? Hermione does. The MAD team. So Chris Stigaloff ran an organization called Kennisland in the Netherlands, in Europe. And Kennisland is a kind of think and do tank that do very similar work to the work that we do and the work that Ada does. And so I said a lot of our work is about bringing unusual suspects together. It's about creating unlikely and unusual connections between people. That's the way we design our events. And this was one of our events. It was a global event. And little did these two know that a few years later, they would be working together, because Chris, on that side of the picture, ran a project in the Netherlands called a social lab, where they spent lots of time outside in the community, understanding the challenges that face those communities and doing co-creation, sound familiar, to come up with new solutions. And I know that Ada met Chris, but not at this time. Ada did not come to the event that I hosted hoping that she would meet somebody from the Netherlands who ran a project called Social Lab, which might be useful in Hong Kong. She just came to one of our events to learn. She had an open mind. She was curious. She asked questions. She built relationships. They both did. And then a few years later, Ada learned a lot more about the Social Labs model. And although it's, of course, not exactly the same as it's been adapted and adopted here, it was certainly, I think, an inspiration for the work that the whole of the Social Lab team do here. So I tell you that story just because I think unusual connections can happen anywhere, anytime. You don't necessarily know where they're going to lead, but they can lead to amazing things like the amazing work that you do in bringing all of you together. So that's 6, and that's unusual.
Thank you for sharing, Louise. Some connections and friendship that we build can really last long and also create bigger and bigger impact. Like that's the story from Ada and Chris, and also between Candiceland and also 6。我哋頭先聽到，其實咧，我哋除咗自己主動去連結唔同嘅人咧，其實 6都扮演緊一個咧係好似促進一啲唔同嘅連結，係一個 connector 嘅角色，亦都去帶動咧唔同領域嘅人咧連結，然後大家就埋一齊去合作㗎嘛。咁喺呢方面咧，我相信阿 Benjamin 咧都係好有經驗嘅，就係點樣由一個叫做社會服務嘅角度，但係同一時間由呢個角度切入，又去連結唔同嘅持份者，又促進佢哋之間嘅協作㗎嘛。不如都請 Benjamin 又分享下你嘅睇法，係啦。
好，OK。Sorry。It's okay. 好開心喺度同大家分享啦。咁我係冼超恒，就香港明愛嘅社區工作嘅。我今日個標題係社區工作員，其實係主要就係做一個社區發展嘅工作啦。我哋好希望啲社群能夠走埋一齊，得到應得嘅資源，同埋得到一個平台，可以有互相幫忙、互相幫助之後呢，其實佢哋可以為自己嘅命運成為佢哋自己主人翁。咁呢個係我哋最想發生嘅事。咁所以我嘅角色呢，其實好多時係一個組織者，咁啊多過一個大家一般理解嘅社工，即係做喺間輔導室做輔導嗰個，其實就唔係我嘅專長嚟。咁反而我喺2005年開始喺薄扶林村工作啦，咁啊做咗11年喺裏邊。咁所以今日本來 Ada 都提，OK， 你好多其他嘢可以再講。不過我話同事問我一個問題，就係我覺得遇過最難相遇到嘅人係咩人呢？咁當時我啱啱呢個朋友身體有啲健康嘅情況啦，咁我有啲掛念佢嘅，咁所以就想藉住今次嘅機會同大家分享下我哋呢段嘅感情嚇。薄扶林牧場係咩嚟呢？其實就係一個香港明愛同埋薄扶林村我哋組織出嚟一個嘅居民嘅互助組織咧，叫做薄扶林村文化環境保育有限公司。咁都係一個慈善機構嚟嘅，一個合辦嘅古蹟活化計劃。咁如果大家有興趣去了解下呢，其實喺 Facebook like 翻呢個薄扶林牧場 The Portland Farm， 咁你會睇到多少少佢嘅背景。咁今日唔多講。但係我哋成個過程無啦啦，點解一個社工一班村民會走去做一個牧場嘅歷史保育呢？最主要就係2013年嘅時候，其實政府有一個好大嘅城市發展嘅藍圖，包括係將薄扶林發展。咁我哋好相信呢，正如好多其他鄉村一樣呢，我哋會面臨清拆。咁但係我哋知道呢，我哋講不遷不拆呢，其實就喺呢個發展嘅論述底下呢，其實就未必會得到一個好正面嘅回應。咁但係正呢。雖然 Ada 努力倡議咗好多年咧，但係當時政府未有文化局，咁我哋就決定咧，不如走呢個即係暗度陳倉啦。我哋就用一個文化嘅角度去講，呢條村其實係一個好重要嘅歷史價值，好重要嘅文化價值。咁希望咧社會關注嘅情況底下，可以保障到條村。咁所以咧最有趣就係條村本身喺正一個大牧場。當時遠東嚟講係最大嘅牧場嚟嘅，喺1886年至到1985年中間，咁就係香港牛奶公司嘅牧場。咁我哋嘅村民係運載咗承繼咗佢嘅故事，所以我哋就覺得不如我哋就借用呢一間屋，當時仲係丟空咗30年嘅一間爛屋，咁我哋就但係第一代嘅牧場經理嘅宿舍嚟嘅，個大宅嚟嘅。咁我哋借用呢間屋咧復修咗佢，然後令到佢咧成為咗我哋嘅一個平台，可以俾村民同公眾對話。咁但係你見到復修間屋之後，我掛個招牌叫做牧場，咁但係冇一個牧場嘅餡喺度，冇牛嘅喎。好多人問我哋：你間屋咁大嘅咋？咁你啲牛擺去邊啊？所以我哋就諗咧，唔得，我哋都係要認真諗下，我可唔可以開翻個真牧場咧，擺翻40隻牛落去咧咁。 咁我哋開始揾牛奶公司啦。其實成件事呢，牛奶公司一開頭都唔係好為意我哋攞咗佢個故仔嚟，即係騎劫咗佢嘅。咁啊，後來呢，佢就揾咗一個顧問嚟。咁中間白色頭髮，我身邊嗰位呢，就叫 Dr. Richard Bent。咁佢當時啱啱退休呢，佢退休前就係 Jardine 嘅HR Director。咁佢當時牛奶公司嘅總裁係佢請。咁我哋執到啦。咁啊，即刻上煙焚水啦，俾影響佢啦，俾啲舊相佢啦。咁俾佢見到我哋呢啲舊村民揸住架拖拉機喺牧場嘅範圍度行啦。成個過程，佢雖然係同我風貌不相及，一個嚟自商界嘅領導嘅人才，我係一個社工做最草根嘅嘢，但係我哋 share 咗一個好重要嘅諗法，就係香港嘅歷史裏邊唔可以冇咗牧場一塊。咁所以當我哋一齊諗呢件事嘅時候呢，佢走咗去揾朋友一齊喺包括喺英國，包括係其他英聯邦地方呢，揾下牧場曾經有嘅一啲舊嘅器材或者資源。咁當中揾到我而家相裏邊呢，喺南非一個村莊裏邊呢，有一架拖拉機。我哋相信呢，係頭先唔係相信，係直頭係頭先我幅舊相裏邊呢，同一個牌子 Massey Ferguson 嘅一個型號嘅拖拉機。咁我哋就將佢邀請到南非一個青年嘅團體咧，幫手進行咗復修，然後呢度已經嚟咗香港，然後擺咗入去我哋牧場當中。咁當中我哋其實成個過程，除咗去想講我哋除咗有一個 infantry 一件物品擺咗喺裏邊之外咧，其實我哋最想講就係每一個一件事發生嘅時候咧，其實背後有好多人、好多努力、好多用心咧，擺咗落去，令到每一件事發生。而一件事咧，正正就係令到我哋由一個目的變成一個聯繫，再成為一個唔同嘅策略去 for 一個 social good。咁呢件事其實有一句説話好好，我成日記住嘅就係法上等願，即係我好似好宗教嘅法願，就我好想做一件事嚇。要呢個願要上等嘅，但係要結中等願。即係我哋其實不亢不卑，寵辱不驚。我哋唔需要為我哋要去做一啲好大嘅目標，要去特登揾一啲好勁嘅人，我哋揾啲社會名流高官達人去令到一件事發生。反而我哋只要我哋一路繼續發呢個大願呢，其實呢啲人會走埋嚟我哋身邊。咁我稍後再分享多啲。
好認同 Benjamin 講啊，我哋發一個好嘅願。然後咧，我哋亦都相信咧，志同道合嘅人咧，慢慢地會走埋一齊，然後我哋凝聚。咁但係咧，我相信咧，其實真係要連結唔同嘅人。頭先大家即係三位都有講到，其實真係好多唔同背景嘅喎，有嚟自政府㗎啦、商界㗎啦、社區㗎啦，或者一啲嘅基層嘅市民啦，大家都有唔同嘅認知，亦都有唔同嘅一啲嘅生活嘅習慣、體驗、唔同嘅睇法。然後我哋好想將大家互相認識啦，連結埋一齊啦，甚至希望去到一步咧係有共同嘅願景。咁我相信當中咧，其實點樣將大家拉埋一齊，都係一個歷程嚟嘅，即係有一步係由唔認識到認識，然後仲要我要認同你或者理解你、明白你，甚至想同你再行一段路，一齊去做啲嘢，做啲 impact。嗰個歷程當中，你覺得即係有冇啲故事都分享下？有冇經歷好大嘅挑戰？同埋即係好似 Benjamin 頭先講，你點樣聚到呢班人有共同嘅理念，一個 share vision 喺呢個過程入邊點樣可以去建立到嘅咧？咁不如都請可以開名。
方才 Tracy 問呢條問題嘅時候咧，我諗翻起我哋 Market Lab 嘅時候認識嘅一位街坊嘅。咁當時啦，我哋喺筲箕灣嘅愛秩序灣街市咧，咁就希望咧去探討點樣令到街市可以更加有活力啦。因為佢係一個有冷氣嘅室內街市啦，但係唔知點解咧，空置率好高，亦都冇咩街坊使用。咁因為咁啦，我哋都同附近嘅一啲住喺個街市附近街坊咧，就即係識咗佢哋啦，然後咧邀請佢哋成為我哋嘅街坊智囊團。咁其中咧有一位街坊咧，咁印象好深刻嘅到而家都，咁佢咧就係一位男性嘅家庭照顧者嚟嘅，咁比較少見啦。咁亦都係喺當我哋同一班街坊一齊傾偈嘅時候，作為當中可能唯一一位嘅男性咧，其實佢都好 唔係好願意去發言啦，亦都比較內斂啦。咁我哋都即係當時都喺度諗啊，到底佢會唔會覺得唔知我哋做緊咩啊？或者佢點樣睇我哋而家諗緊嘅 ideas 咧？咁我覺得有一個位咧係有個 breakthrough 嘅，就係頭先提到啦，我哋用一個同理心、一個人類學嘅方法去理解大家。我真係同佢做朋友，我唔單止係去諗啊，其實佢喺街市做啲咩？調翻轉咧，我哋想知係佢唔喺街市嘅時候佢做緊啲咩咧？咁後來我哋就發現，原來呢位街坊咧，佢同佢傾多啲啦，佢日常嘅生活啦，就發現佢因為要照顧太太啦，咁就已經好少落廚啦。但係咧，其實佢以前咧其實係一位大廚嚟嘅，咁佢一直咧都好想咧再去得閒可以煮下餸啦，咁但係就冇呢啲機會。咁因為啦，我哋了解咗佢原來個人嘅生活佢背景啦，咁就喺嚟緊嘅 prototype 入邊咧，同大家共創嘅時候咧，我哋就喺度諗啊，會唔會可以善用呢位街坊呢個善於落廚嘅呢一個長項呢？咁最後咧，我哋就邀請咗佢咧成為其中一個 prototype 入邊叫主人教路，就係由一班識煮飯嘅街坊咧喺街市中庭咧去教翻其他街坊煮嘢食，善用翻當地地區嘅 network。咁於是咧呢位陳生咧，咁佢咧就成為咗我哋其中一位煮嘢食嘅，帶大家一齊去整腸粉嘅一位大廚啦。印象好深刻咧，過咗嗰一次嘅 prototype 之後咧，我哋做咗2次嘅。咁第一次 prototype 嗰一次 prototype 之後咧，我哋預翻陳生問下佢，喂，上次你覺得個 prototype 點啊？我哋之後再一齊做好冇啊？佢咧係會同我哋講話。啊，好啊，幾好喎！我原來之後落區有人同我講，我認得你啊！上次公園即係我上次喺街市入邊見過你㗎。一齊晨運啦！呢個過程咧，我好深刻就係當我哋原來發現 unusual 嘅 connection 可以為我哋帶嚟好多嘅新嘅可能，同時咧亦都令到街坊喺呢個過程當中發現翻自己原來都係有好多新嘅可能，咁令到佢哋願意踏出嗰一步，似乎佢以前唔會做嘅，佢就成為咗我哋一個新嘅 connection。係，我諗希望回應到 Tracy 呢條問題啦。
好，我聽到嘅係呢一個即係真誠嘅出發點，我真係好對對方係好似真係好想交心，真誠地認識佢，亦都展現真誠嘅自己，大家就可以有互相嘅認識，立體咁樣去認識同埋連結咁樣。我都請 Louise 都可以分享下，喺嗰個連結唔同持份者當中，會唔會都有啲嘅困難或者挑戰，又點樣讓大家一齊有一個共同嘅方向去行嗰個路嘅呢？
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that involves people is always difficult, full stop. Because it's funny, on the one hand, we are very, humans are social animals. We are meant to be, we're natural with each other and we are meant to be connected. This is in our nature. On the other hand, we often it's a bit more challenging. We have to go outside of our comfort zone to talk to someone different, which is why things like empathy, I think, are very important values, because it's more effort to have a conversation with somebody that you don't know or to find someone you don't know in the first place than not. So it's always challenging, I would say. But I think there are tools that you can use to enable these kind of collaborations and unusual connections to happen. And maybe I'll just talk about briefly 3 different things that we do and lessons that we have. Maybe the first one is very simple. I say it's simple, but people don't do it. Is space and design. Creating physical spaces where unusual connections can happen all the time. The traditional office, of course, is designed in a way that has walls and barriers, and people aren't supposed to connect to each other. And it is becoming more trendy and more popular now to have open space offices that have thought put into them where people can physically bump into each other more often. So I think the more spaces and the more ways we design our streets, the more ways we design our offices, the more ways we design buildings where people have the opportunity just to see each other and talk to each other at coffee and things like that. I think that's one way to get over these things. The second way is through designing experiences and designing events. I saw the activity that you just did here on the carpet. This is a perfect example of designing a way that makes it feel comfortable for people to connect. You give them a tool, you give them a prompt, a reason to come together, and I think that is one way of overcoming some of the challenges that people face around being shy or thinking that you don't have anything to offer, is just to create very neutral tools and experiences. And one of the things that we have hosted over the last few years is something called the Unusual Suspects Festival. And during that festival, what we did is a citywide festival. We did one in London, we've done them in Seoul, in South Korea, in Glasgow, in Scotland, and Northern Ireland as well. And the purpose is to get people out of their comfort zones and go and see something else. So they're all over the city in spaces that people wouldn't usually go to. So we make it easier for people. You can bring your own people, but in a different kind of space. And then you bump into different types of people and you learn about different kinds of things. And so I think that's a combination of this activity that you just did here, but in different places. And I know you may do some of that tomorrow as well. And then the third thing you can do is a little bit more like the social lab work, but it's designing programming where people work together on things. It's almost like you need to kind of force some collaboration between people, because sometimes you think it's going to be very unnatural, and then over time you learn how to work together. So many of the unusual connections that I have made in my work have been through programs of work that the government, or the European Commission in this case, supports. So one of the things they do is they provide a huge amount of funding, and they say you can apply for it if you work with at least 6 other countries, and you have to bring in 4 different sectors. So there's the money available, there's loads of it. You can have it over a couple of years, but only if you collaborate. And at first it's very uncomfortable, because you have to bring together people who are really different to you. People in the east of Europe are very different from the west, and the north and the south as well, very different culturally. There is 27 different languages in the European project, and so you're usually working with many people who English is not their first language. Strangely, we work in English. But that kind of forced collaboration over time is an extremely effective way to make more unusual connections, and develop these really different kinds of relationships. So maybe I'll just leave it there. But you can force it, basically. What I'm saying is you can force it, and sometimes that works. Not always.
識朋友都係咁啊，大家都係要隨心，同埋即係我聽到其實阿 Louise 分享咗一啲唔同嘅方法啦，甚至係我哋點樣去創造一個咧，我叫做 enabling environment， 一個能夠成就到、推進到呢一啲嘅連結發生嘅一個空間、一個場景，然後讓大家走埋一齊。我哋又聽下 Benjamin 嘅分享經驗係。
好，我 echo 做要有個 space 呢一件事嘅。即係我喺其他 project 裏邊，其實 even 薄扶林牧場本身係一個 space 啦。咁喺劏房戶嘅工作裏邊，我都喺create 緊一啲 extended living space， 俾佢哋喺即係街角裏邊有個鋪頭，咁可以喺嗰度咧同其他劏房戶相遇，亦都可以同其他即係社群可以去相遇嚇。清潔工人，我哋都係希望社區裏邊有唔同餐廳、唔同嘅商戶可以提供一個空間俾佢哋休息。咁乘機咧，亦都可以俾佢哋同其他嘅社群嘅人士咧去相遇。所以 space 好緊要，因為我哋社會裏邊好多隱形嘅社群咧，其實唔呈現出嚟咧，基本上我哋其他人就算哪怕係幾咁人口都好啦， 幾咁 compassion 都好咧，你係冇辦法接觸到、理解到。咁呢度指引佢第二個位咧就係、當理解到就係 empathy， 就係頭先Hermione提嘅功夫，我哋點樣做好嗰個接觸，點樣做好嗰個建立相識、相信相信任嗰件事。但我往往咧見到咧特別想 highlight 就係、當好多嘅相處之後咧，往往好快就會倒退嚇。雖然個頭開得好靚，但係好快就會倒退。點解咧？其實會有兩個原因嘅。第一就係我哋本身有個其實尤其是城市生活，令我哋建立咗一個幾大嘅 defense。咁裏邊可以好籠統咁講咧，係一個 judgmental mindset。我哋好快會去判斷呢個人個能力係咪好啦，係咪幫到手啦，係咪我同佢夾係咪可以真係做到呢件事啦？咁我哋好快做呢個判斷。尤其是喺工作環境或者喺學校環境，我哋好快其實我同佢拍住係咪真係幫緊件事？咁如果個答案唔係咧，我哋可能好快就不如我哋留翻嗰啲時間揾其他啲夾得過嘅人啦。你可以話共利，但係調翻轉其實亦都係我哋喺一個咁壓力嘅社會環境底下，我哋好容易發生嘅或者我哋教育裏邊，我哋都成日提，我哋要經常要 make judgment。contrast 嘅話，即係我哋其實要令到佢逆轉嘅話，其實我哋就需要做到嘅係點樣去發覺每一個相遇都係一堂課，每一個相遇都係我學習嘅對象，每一個相遇我都想理解下佢背後其實係點嘅成長環境，佢背後係建立咗一套點嘅信念，佢背後其實係建立緊一套點嘅信仰嚇，咁令到佢成為今天嘅佢。人呢，其實好得意嘅，人係自己經驗嘅酬勞嚟嘅，即係我冇經歷過嗰件事呢，我就只能夠憑我自己經驗，然後建立到嗰種體會，就企咗喺度㗎啦。當你同我講你嘅體會同我嘅體會唔同嘅時候呢，我未經歷過啊嘛，我就唔會有個迴響喺度。咁所以呢，好多時我哋就需要喺呢啲時候呢，亦都 echo 頭先 Louis 講呢，就係我哋係需要建立一啲新經驗，等大家重新去有一啲共同嘅體會。當然第二樣嘢就係講開 mindset 咧，其實仲有多樣嘢就係我哋好多時咧以為我哋講緊同一個説話，唔係講緊英文同中文嘅分別，而係講緊我講嘅 empathy 同 Hermione 頭先講嘅 empathy 可以係兩個完全唔同嘅理解嚟嘅。咁當我哋好匆忙咁去決定一個即係溝通嘅時候咧，其實我哋好容易誤解咗。譬如我試過同一個醫生都係我一啲好親密嘅伙伴合作嘅朋友嚟㗎啦。我哋一齊傾我哋點樣叫做好啲基層醫療。我哋一齊傾家庭醫療呢件事，家庭健康呢件事。喺我角度，我做開社區咧，我覺得家庭係一個原子咁細嘅一個點嚟嘅啫。但係喺一個醫生嘅角度咧，家庭係多過一個人，嗰種複雜性已經好大嘅。當我可以令到一個家庭一齊幫一個病人去維持個健康，已經係一件好勁嘅事。但喺我角度嚟講，我哋係要改變個生態，先令到大家一齊健康。咁所以唔好放過任何一個機會，我哋去理解每個説話背後嘅意思。
嗰個理解咧係持續落去，因為都幾特別。即係我哋好想去同人連結嘅時候啦，一開始嘅時候懷住一種好奇甚至勇氣，走出自己安舒區，同自己好唔同嘅人去連結。但係同一時間咧，亦都可能因着過往自己經驗或者嗰個限制，有咗一啲嘅假設，有啲前設而去認識對方，甚至自己都會被對方嘅前設同埋假設嚟認識我。咁大家就好容易可能就喺咗嗰個好似 Benjamin 頭先講個 judgment 或者個假設或者個批判，而一路認識落去咧，其實好想透過同理心打破，但係一路再認識落去經驗又可能又成為咗一個限制，因為你多咗一啲嘅 judgment 啦咁啊。咁所以好想問，即係呢個既然係一個持續嘅過程，似乎係唔係淨係第一個點啊？認識個點我哋要打破，其實持續地要打破呢種假設，呢種嘅判斷批判。咁你哋有冇啲咩嘅經驗覺得即係嗰個打破 我嘅前設。即係我做教育㗎啦，我都成日覺得即係由家庭延展開始，即係教育都係關一個家庭事，由個小朋友到個媽媽、爺爺嫲嫲，但係佢哋又會可能對老師、對校長，甚至對教育局都有佢自己本身嘅睇法。但係點樣可以去打破呢啲睇法，讓大家真係真誠咁樣去連結，然後持續地互相認識呢？都邀請你哋分享下你哋嘅經驗或者故事。
好，係咁我講先啦。咁我自己覺得咧，其實人係好難放下前設嘅。即係好 fair 地去諗啦。當我自己走入社區，去同的士司機、去同圍村入邊嘅居民傾偈嘅時候，我都好難避免咁樣帶住一套想像。即係無論係根據我以往去做嘅 research 啦，定係在我平時日常生活入邊去聽到嘅唔同嘅故事。我會覺得咧，喺呢一個位咧，我會希望自己係就算唔可以放低前設啦，但係我要 aware 到自己係有呢一個假設喺度，因為當你 aware 到嘅時候，你先有機會去驗證、去理解、去思考你嘅假設係咪一個真確嘅假設。咁我呢個位咧，我覺得連結翻上一條問題咧，會令我去諗係其實做實驗啊，即係人同人嘅相處，我哋唔單止喺 prototype 上面做實驗，其實點樣去同唔同嘅人合作咧，都係一個可以去實驗嘅地方。咁而當我哋去進入一個社區去了解啲人嘅時候，咁就抱住一個做實驗嘅心態，咁就會係我可能有啲 hypothesis， 但係我可以係錯嘅。咁當我錯嘅時候，我咪去更正咯。我不斷去 review， 不斷去再重新理解呢個人，重新理解唔單止係呢一個群體啊，而係呢一個人。好多時候我哋行入社區嘅時候，我會用一個群體嘅身份去諗嗰個人，但係實際上當我落到地同佢哋相處，我知道嘅係嗰一位對象，而唔係佢代表嘅身份，唔係一個家庭照顧者，唔係一個村民，而係呢一位 uncle， 呢一位嘅先生，呢一位嘅小姐。咁我諗喺呢個過程當中，不斷去實驗、去思考自己同對方嘅關係，然後去諗我到底仲有冇一啲錯誤嘅假設嘅存在呢，咁會好幫助到我哋去真係去 build up 翻一個 readiness 啦，同埋一個新嘅眼鏡去 start 一段 conversation。而呢個亦都係我覺得喺 social lab 入邊咧，我另一個好大嘅發現啦，就係因為當我哋每一個 lab 咧都會同好多唔同背景嘅朋友啦，一班 labbers 一齊咧去做一個實驗。咁好似 Benjamin 頭先所講嘅經驗啦，我哋可能喺健康實驗室入邊，我哋有嚟自醫療背景嘅，有本身咧係做對 sociology 好有認識嘅，亦都有人係做政策研究等等。咁每個人帶住咁唔同嘅諗法啦、language 啊同假設行埋一齊嘅時候咧，啱啱大家所提到嘅嗰個工具就好重要。點樣可以透過一啲工具去令到大家係寫低佢哋所講嘅每一樣嘢，或者將佢哋諗緊嗰個到底我哋講緊家庭醫療係咩咧？可以 visualize 到，甚至 communicate 到出去咧。咁呢個係我哋即係一直喺 social 過程當中會運用好多嘅。咁所以我會覺得工具啦，同埋即係 awareness 啊，會係啱啱回應 Tracy 所講點樣去面對假設呢一個好重要嘅兩樣嘢。
都請 Louise 又可以分享下你嘅經驗。
I think I understand the question that we're the kind of values and
kind of like breaking assumptions towards the others because of the background or like the position or like past experience, and how we can really like break down that assumptions and build authentic connections.
Yeah, I think it's very. Maybe I take a slightly additional approach thinking about sectors, because I think we work a lot of between sectors, and we're trying to create those kind of connections between people who come from very different backgrounds, who we assume have very different values. So I think it's fair to say that we think, anyone that works in the private sector is only driven by money, and they're very greedy, and they work too much, etc., etc. And people in the private sector think that anyone that works in the social sector is a bit wet and a bit weak, and we don't really have proper jobs because we're interested in society. And then, of course, in the public sector, governments, useless, slow, red tape, can't get anything done. Philanthropy, too much money, don't know what they're doing, why aren't they giving more out? You know, we all have these assumptions about each other. And actually, I think one of the things that we realize, or that we have to remember, and I have to remind my team when we're doing this, is we are all people. And actually, many of us have worked in different sectors before. But not only that we're all people, that we all have to work within a structure. And so I think being able to, and this comes down to empathy, but it's also around curiosity, asking questions, having open mindset, all of these things are really important. So you have to realize that, you know, government people are not just awful people, but they just have a system that they have to work with. Or philanthropy are not just greedy and keeping all their money there, but for whatever reason, they have to be very careful about where their money is going because their boss says this and their boss says this above there and their boss says this above there. So I think there is just so much around people's circumstances that we kind of forget when we're trying to collaborate with people, that actually it's about the systems behind them that are governing them. Or it's a very human thing. I think sometimes that this person is not just an awful person that has said no to you, but maybe they've just had a really bad day. Or their meeting previously was not a good one and they're not in a good mood. So I think, you know, being able to look into the person, both as an individual, not just where they're from, and also what is sitting behind them and what their restrictions are, really, really helps us kind of break down those things. Governments are also very slow, though, so I will hold to that. But don't tell anyone why I said that.
我相信即係外在有唔同嘅 system， 但係就每個人嘅內在都有一個好豐富嘅宇宙，我哋都要發現嘅。Benjamin
係我估我會 focus 喺即係兩三點啦，而家講。第一個我會睇到嘅就係我哋其實好容易咧去頭先 Louis 講得好，就我哋好容易擺一啲 label 落人度。但係我會更想做到嘅就係其實擺一個 identity 係大家都 share 嘅，即係話我哋其實某程度上我哋都可以喺唔同嘅位置度 connect 到一個身份咧，係我同你之間係可以 connect 到嘅。舉個例，譬如我爸爸係水上人嚟嘅，我媽媽係潮州人嚟嘅，我住7層公屋大嘅，我讀某間學校嘅，咁我會好清楚咧，我每個位置咧，我喺唔同時候我會用。我話俾人，我對住個水上人喺香港仔，我會同佢講我係水上人。喺薄扶林村正有1/4人係潮州人，仲要係同鄉嚟嘅。咁我即刻認親認戚㗎啦。咁所以嗱但係當然呢啲就係你與生俱來嘅，或者你經歷成為嘅。但係更加多嘅你可以 create 一個共同身份。譬如我頭先聽到就係山上嘅朋友。咁呢個身份好似可能係今日先開始有嘅。但係正就係我哋可以 create 出嚟嘅身份，可以好好咁樣去思想下我哋點樣可以喺我哋生活裏邊 create 多啲唔同身份共同擁有。第二樣嘢，我估 echo 翻我頭先我個 presentation 咧，其實阿 Richard 提我嘅，即係佢用佢行為驗證嘅。我 office 嗰陣時有一幅薄扶林第一張航空圖，1924年，佢嚟過探過我之後咧，冇提過任何嘢。隔咗3個禮拜之後，啱啱識嘅嗰陣時。佢就問翻我：你有冇懷疑你嗰幅圖咧係邊架航空母艦派出嘅偵察機去影落嚟嘅？1924年。咁好彩我係睇《聖鬥士星矢》大，咁我知咧咩飛馬座係咩嚟嘅。咁所以咧，咁嗰架就係飛馬座英國艦艇啦。咁我答到佢，咁就變咗咧，佢係即係佢當下佢知道我係認真對待我做緊嘅嘢。咁然後佢就即係我哋嘅關係係咁樣建立嘅。當然仲有下山30幾條問題喺同一個會議上面佢問咗我。咁我估呢個對我嚟講就係我哋對人嘅判斷其實我而家簡化到好簡單嘅，我都會有判斷。問題我嘅判斷就係佢對佢自己個 trade， 佢對佢自己做緊嘅嘢係咪認真？講個動力嚇，頭先 Louis 講緊去好多 處境會令到我哋有時都想撇下，都想 hea 下。但係佢如果個動力本身都係源不絕嘅，嗰樣嘢一定係對佢嚟講好重要。咁呢個判斷我一定會去睇。認真嘅就合作得過㗎啦。我估最後就係講一樣嘢，就係我哋好多朋友裏邊都聽我講咧。阿 Rich 本身有個我可以點講咧？即係佢個身體有個好大嘅衝擊啦。咁佢同我提翻頭先嘅 tractor， 其實就係佢維持生命嘅一個最主要嘅 external factor， 即係撇除佢同其他屋企人朋友嘅感情之外，做到呢件事係一個 external factor， 係延續到佢生命嘅 external factor。我覺得我哋其實每個人如果能夠都同我哋嘅伙伴揾到呢一啲咁重要嘅 purpose， 我哋一齊建立到我哋個 motivation 喺裏邊咧，我哋就其他 assumption 嗰啲我哋逾越到㗎啦。
好重要係真係立體唔同面向咁去認識一個人。而喺呢個時間咧，我都好想咧都立體咁認識我哋在座嘅每一位山友，同埋咧同我哋三位嘅分享嘅朋友咧，可以大家有啲嘅互動。我哋有10分鐘時間，咁睇下咧現場嘅朋友咧有啲問題，或者聽咗之後可能都有啲回應，你都想分享下嘅，咁可以即係 feel free 去舉手啦。我哋現場嘅工作人員咧都會遞個咪俾你嘅。咁喺我哋等待問題嘅時間咧，我都睇到咧線上都有朋友問其實即係社區工作咧，尤其是即係我哋會有好多唔同背景嘅人，咁但係點樣令到大家都舒服地覺得真係會撇除大家嘅身份角色，係平等咁樣溝通咧，而唔會讓可能尤其是即係基層佢會覺得你係高我一等㗎，或者係有啲權力嘅關係啊，然後大家唔能夠平等咁樣即係相處。點樣可以去進行社區工作，或者去做呢啲唔同連結嘅時候，讓大家都係一個平等嘅位置去交流、去認識咧 ？Benjamin 咧？
有啲即係師傅教落有啲 tactics 嘅，即係譬如話其實頭先啱啱呢個 session 大家都提到，譬如我哋會差唔多相約嘅時間去做個回應啦。我哋會特別留意唔出聲嘅人啦，我哋會邀請唔出聲嘅人講嘢啦。我哋會壓抑一啲好主導嘅人啦。咁當然即係我作為 organizer 嘅身份，我同埋大家對我有信任嘅時候，可以做呢件事啦。即係你話好自然咁樣發生呢，咁就要有個信任嘅基礎。咁但我哋有幾個前設嘅，一個就係如果喺城市環境呢，完全嘅陌生者係好嘅，個信任好快建立到嘅。喺一個鄉郊或者本身好多關聯嘅社區呢，其實就需要多啲嘅即係時間嚟去令嗰件事發生，令個信任發生。因為本身佢哋好多顧慮，講每一樣嘢之前都要諗一輪，有冇影響到屋企人，有冇影響到其他嘅人嘅睇法咁樣。咁我估呢啲基礎其實可以好多分享嘅，但係有興趣可以即係另一個場合再交流。
好。Hamian 或者 Louis。
You repeat the question.
The question is about how we can build equal relationship, facilitate equal interaction instead of having the hierarchy or power dynamics.
One of the things I think is really strange when we're thinking about building connections in a work situation is people forget about how they build connections in their personal lives. So we seem to be okay in our personal lives to meet new people, to decide who we want our life partner to be, for example. You have to ask some questions, you have to start to understand each other. But it seems as soon as we get in a work situation, most of us behave very bizarrely around building new connections and building relationships. So I think going back to being really human is really important in all of this, having that kind of open mindset. You have to get to know someone in the way, I mean, of course, you ask different kinds of questions, but you have to get to know someone in a really personal way for the human being that they are, if you are going to work with them, or if you're going to meet them, or if you're going to ask them any questions, or you're going to try and understand them. And I think we forget those that part of human nature when we get in a work environment. So I think my biggest reflection on how we do this is to go back to basics and just try to be a bit more normal about things. And remember that when you're working with someone, of course, the context is different and the questions you ask is different. But there is no reason why the approach shouldn't be the same. And I think patience is also important because, again, you don't often meet someone and then, fall in love with them in 1 minute and decide to get married to them. So to expect the same when you're trying to work with someone or to understand them or collaborate with them is quite bizarre. I think relationships take time, particularly relationships between people who are different to each other. It's an exploratory activity that you both need to do. And I think, going back to basics and being a bit human about this is something that I think we all forget to do quite a lot.
我諗我非常之 echo 頭先兩位嘅個講法啦，就好似啱啱我最開始分享嗰陣，我講緊要做朋友。正正就係呢種即係喺做朋友嘅時候，當然可以有好多嘅小技巧啦。譬如唔好當對方問你哋想點嘅時候，調翻轉你可以邀請佢去分享，又或者係 patient 啦等等。但係我覺得呢啲技巧其實at the end 翻到最後都係嗰種尊重，即係當我哋去想 engage 的士司機了解佢日常生活嘅時候，我唔會坐喺個 office 度邀請佢上嚟，喂，你不如揾日take 1個鐘頭 break 上嚟啦，因為我知道佢要賺錢。揸的士嘅每一秒都係佢嘅生計。咁調翻轉，其實我哋如果你做一個朋友，你尊重對方嘅 schedule， 咁你咪去了解其實佢幾時會得閒呢？佢幾時會比較願意同你分享傾偈呢？咁咪喺嗰啲時候去揾佢咯。又或者可能同村入邊嘅叔叔，咁其實佢好想同你分享，哇！我細個去呢度玩，去嗰度玩，細個會做呢啲嘢。咁如果我好work driven 咁樣去諗就其實呢啲嘢好似都唔關我做本地旅遊事啊。咁但係調翻轉，如果你尊重佢，當佢好想分享嘅時候，咁你又聽，咁你就會發現，咦唔係喎，講下其實都係啲幾有趣嘅 resources 去做本地遊喎。又或者就算唔係去做本地遊都好，淨係聽佢分享都好玩㗎。甚至 uncle 到最後會帶我哋一齊去摘龍眼。即係我覺得呢啲尊重，即係 at the end 你嗰啲技巧翻去最後就係你做翻一個人同人去交往咯。所以即係補充翻兩位，我冇太多可以再分享。
好，而家咧都想認識下現場嘅山友啊，我哋又一齊交往下，認識下，互相認識下。再一次邀請咧，睇下有冇朋友會有問題，或者都有啲嘢回應啊。可能頭先幾位嘅分享有啲嘢你都覺得觸動到你嘅喎，都可以分享下嘅。或者都覺得聽咗你都讓你若有所思嘅，你都想諗一諗個腦袋轉動緊，又想分享下你諗緊咩嘅咁樣。好，我哋通常咧都係等5秒嘅。5、4、3，有，好，麻煩後邊中間嗰行係啦。咁麻煩你可以介紹下自己啊，你個名或者唔介意都講下你嘅背景咁樣，然後我哋又可以再一齊傾下偈。
我係阿 Ken 啦，咁我背景係我做新聞嘅。咁我比較好奇，因為我自己都即叫做會可能想揾啲人去接受訪問啊，即係可能個性質都比較相近，即係可能我哋有啲嘢想做，然後我哋去接觸嗰啲人。咁我發覺咧有時會有個掙扎就係我係究竟用一個記者嘅身份啦，定係用一個朋友嘅身份呢？或者個衝突，即係嗰個權力上似乎好難處理。究竟我去接觸呢個受訪者，我帶住嗰個心情應該係點樣？個動機係點樣呢？咁我頭先聽咗好多好嘅分享，咁我就比較好奇，你哋幾位都係可能成日會做呢件事嘅，有冇啲你哋特別深刻嘅例子？即係譬如可能一開始嗰個受訪者或者係你哋想接觸嘅對象係比較保守啲，或者可能佢唔想分享自己嘅嘢。咁你去 keep 住去嘗試去接觸佢，然後佢慢慢去敞開心扉，有冇啲咁嘅例子呢？而你過程入邊，你嗰個心路歷程又係點樣呢？都即係何謂成功咗呢？喺你哋嗰個experience 嗰度。
如果有人一開始落咗閘，然後你點樣繼續都唔怕，繼續敲門，然後一路融化佢，讓佢個心門打開俾你。
little slow. So one of the things that's important for us at Six in our name is we are called the Social Innovation Exchange, not a network. And we very much believe always in a value exchange, rather than always, I need the thing, so I will find a way to extract information. We talk very much about, at Six, the difference between transactional and relational approaches to doing this kind of work. And we have to interview a lot of people. And I think it's okay. Sometimes it's just not going to work. But I think taking a much more kind of relational approach where you get to know someone a little bit more before you go straight in and try and extract information from them is a really important thing. And so, for example, we interview a lot of people for the work that we do, and quite often we ask them for a different kind of conversation before we do an interview with them. So we ask them to learn about them, and we want to tell them about us. We have a exchange rather than a can I take the information from you first, and then later on we talk about whether it's possible to interview them at the first place. But I think, this comes down to two of the things that we've all talked about during this conversation. One is that kind of patience thing, and it takes time. But also two, the kind of empathy. Because quite often when you've asked someone for an interview, etc., you have to think, how many interviews have they been asked for today or this week already? And so trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes, I think for us always helps. So I always say to my team, if someone says no to something, try and think about why they have said no to you. It's not just because they don't want to speak to you at this moment. And I think those two things are really important for the work that we do.
Thank you, Louise.
我諗我會諗到嘅係喺 interview 之前，或者喺去嘗試去同對方再進一步展開個 conversation 之前，反而係要停一停，去觀察同埋去理解。好似其實 Louis 頭先都有提到咁，就係佢唔想同你做一個進一步嘅 conversation 背後嘅原因係咩呢？咁我覺得喺呢個過程當中呢，其實無論係我之前同唔同嘅一啲可能公營部門嘅朋友打交道嘅經驗啦，或者同街坊或者其他合作伙伴嘅交流嘅經驗入邊呢，我都會發現其實去觀察同埋理解佢嘅需要呢，應該永遠都會係第一步嘅，因為只有喺理解咗佢點解拒絕你，或者佢點解有唔同嘅意見之後，你先會可以諗到，咁其實當中會唔會有一啲位其實你哋之間係冇矛盾，或者甚至你哋係有啲 share 嘅東西，只係大家表達出嚟嘅方法唔同。咁透過呢一個停一停、諗一諗嘅過程，去反思翻，咁我之後再去 approach 對方嘅時候，咁其實我應該用一個咩嘅語言啦，用一個咩嘅説話，一個論述啦，令到佢去明白其實你哋係想做啲咩咧咁樣。咁所以我諗反而係衝之前，我哋再停一停，呢一步都幾緊要嘅。
我啱啱出咗門翻嚟啦，咁所以喺飛機度我睇《神探》劉青雲嗰套。我覺得用呢個方式去思考件事，即係如果我真係咁想認識一個人，我就好拉近佢，好近嚟去觀察佢咯。咁過佢嘅生活經歷，佢每日24小時係點樣經歷嘅，咁你慢慢會知道佢其實需要緊啲乜嘢。咁然後第二步，我通常就係我成為能夠可以俾到佢要嘅嘢嘅人。我面皮好薄嘅，其實我本身 introvert 嚟嘅，咁但係即係個工作訓練我要面皮好厚，但係我最喜歡用嘅嘢都係其實我喜歡佢 approach 翻我轉頭，但係我點樣令到佢有個動力去 approach 我呢？咁我就要就係喺我掌握咗佢需要乜嘢之後呢，我俾佢知道我有佢要嘅嘢，佢嚟問我，咁嗰件事就容易解決好多嘅，其實。
好，我咧係好 aware 個時間，咁但係咧我都好想睇下咧，即係一個對話係好重要同埋好享受，所以我都睇下現場嘅朋友有冇都有唔同嘅問題，我一次過收集唔同嘅問題或者一啲嘅分享。我哋中間呢一度有位，然後前面係啦有位男士，中間都有位男士，可唔可以麻煩你再舉手？中間男士一陣間到你係啦。哦，我哋去咗後邊先係。咁啊，一樣啦，介紹下你自己叫咩名，你嘅背景，然後可以問問題或者分享感受係啦。
Hello，Tessie，Hi，我係 Morgan，我係中大人類學嘅一個學生啦。咁我都今日好多謝你嘅分享啦，都好大啟發，其實對即係可能我哋讀人類學嘅，因為我哋好多一啲學科嘅背景就係同唔同人去溝通，嘗試去過唔同人嘅生活，同埋喺嗰個羣體入邊去理解佢哋點樣去對一啲大嘅問題，佢哋自己應對方法係點樣啦。我會比較好奇一樣嘢就係進行咗社會創新之後，跟住咧即係要點樣去將一個創新嘅 idea去制度化，或者係要將佢變成一個持之以恆，可以影響到個社區嘅咧。因為好多時候就係我哋見到嘅一個情況就係有件事咁我哋關注咗，咁關注咗我哋做咗啲嘢，但係呢樣嘢你冇關注或者係冇人去做嘢之後咧，佢就冇咗啦。咁但係負責做創新嘅機構，如果停咗落嚟，唔去再做其他更多創新嘅嘢嗰陣時咧，咁我哋就會 base on咗一樣嘢去 keep 住做嗰個位，就可能就拓展到唔到更多嘅一個受眾咯。咁會好奇即係會點樣去 negotiate 呢個情況咧？
好多謝你嘅問題，嗰個創新社會創新嘅持續性同埋嗰個影響力嘅持續性，我哋聽埋前面呢位朋友嘅提問先，係嘛？好。
Thank you。我叫 Freddie 係一個紀錄片導演嚟嘅。想問下幾位呢，做社會實驗呢，去到咩位你覺得係做完或者係停啊？因為紀錄片都係咁啊，永遠都唔知佢咩位停，所以我覺得好 share 即係聽咗一日。係啊，咁啊第二個問題就係即係你會覺得去講一個社會實驗嘅 project 呢個故仔呢，有咩難度呢？講俾人聽。
好，我哋重複3個問題啦。第一就係一個社會創新嘅持續性同埋點樣維持嗰個 impact。咁第二咧就係嗰個 end。咁我哋頭先第一個環節都有講個 end goal 或者個 end game 啊，即係我哋要去開展個社會創新嘅時候，係咪都已經要諗個 end game 係咩咧？咁第三咧就係做一啲社會創新或者社會實驗記錄嘅時候啦，紀錄片咧尤其是我諗，或者用唔同形式嘅記錄，有啲咩難處係嘛？即係啦，要注意啲乜嘢係啦？有啲咩難度係啦？隨便係自由。
沒完沒了嘅第一個答案，因為你會上癮嘅。簡單講，如果真係咁好彩，俾你做個 prototype 又 work 到，又帶到啲好嘅成效，俾到一啲嘅即係社群咧，你會覺得我係發揮緊一個力量。咁呢個好緊要，因為我好信我哋每一個人都喺個社會系統裏邊係重要嘅，同埋我哋每一個人其實就係個社會系統。咁當你試咗一次得，咁點解唔繼續試落去呢？咁可以一路繼續做好多嘢。所以你頭先我簡單介紹下，大家都知我都好垃圾嘅，即係文化、建築、醫療各樣我都會掂嘅，就係因為我喺薄扶林村試有得，咁所以我出嚟再試其他嘢啦。即係我會形容我自己走出山窿，即係落山嘅，係咁啦。咁N 嗰個問題好好嘅，其實就係呢個係我其中一個即係入行最重要、最重視嘅位，就係我幾時自我約制。即係你知做社區嘢咧，好容易成為咗土皇帝，因為當你同個社群好熟，佢哋好信任你嘅時候咧，基本上真係可以翹埋雙手，好多嘢可以一齊發生。咁但係點樣？所以中間要定一啲指標嘅。譬如我個目的其實就係令到佢能夠掌握到自己生命有個 agency 可以改變到佢居住環境啦。咁我就係時候走啦。我就係時候離，所以我離開咗薄扶林村。咁如果唔係有個牧場，基本上我就好乾淨嘅。我唔中意拖泥帶水嘅，我會完全斬纜。 咁因為你會發覺咁樣佢就會大，即係其實好似湊細路咁。你唔放手佢就唔會大。咁至於拍紀錄片呢個，其實最近好多討論咁我都有參與加一嘴嘅。咁我覺得去到尾其實尊重，即係嗰個因為嗰個生命嚟嘅，嗰個係生命故事，佢不能夠造作，不能夠係假，不能夠係威逼。本身成件事個歷程係要自然發生。咁我覺得最大嘅挑戰係即係導演或者係個 crew 究竟有幾多時間去做呢件事。咁我試過幫2個地區寫口述歷史。咁一本我好專注咁做咗3個月出到，一本我用咗3年。咁真係有時有啲冇辦法去決定，都係講緊即係200頁到嘅一本書。我估最尾就係個最大挑戰就係我哋捱唔捱得住嗰件事係咪真係我哋咁 passionate 去做嗰件事咯？我哋捱得住嗰件事就成。
我想一次地回應頭2條問題嘅，因為我可能補充 Benjamin 嘅另一個面向啦。我諗喺 social lab 入邊有一樣好獨特嘅我自己好 inspire 嘅咧，就係我哋每一個 lab 咧都會招募好多嚟自唔同界別嘅 labbers。咁喺個 lab 入邊咧，其實無論同事啦、labbers 啦，其實係一齊好平等咁樣咧去 go through 成個 process 嘅。而喺呢個過程當中咧，我覺得對我嚟講啦，我見到最大影響或者最motivate 到我去繼續嘅咧，唔係我哋最後個 prototype 做完之後有幾成功。咁當然啦，我當然好希望個 prototype 做完之後係有一啲影響嘅，然後可以有繼續嘅持續落去機會。但係另一方面咧，我會覺得我見到最大嘅一個change 我會話係發生喺一齊參與呢個過程嘅呢一班同路人身上面，即係當大家一齊 go through 呢個 process， 一齊就住一個願景去努力，然後真係走入社區去了解呢個議題之後咧，其實會真實咁樣咧去改變或者係有一啲新嘅睇法啊，對於到底未來佢點樣再去繼續自己嘅生活、自己嘅工作，而呢一個 impact 咧唔單止係短期內我會見到，而係長遠地其實係我哋不斷咁樣去 build up， 好似埋下一個種子咁樣。咁所以即係今日其實我哋之前無論 Ali 啦、Rachel 啦、我本人啦，其實我都係以往都係個 labber 加入 social lab， 即係有好多我哋嘅 quote 喺後邊嚟。如果大家見到啲 labber， 所以同大家傾下偈啦。即係其實我呢幾年咧，我一直見到喺 social lab 參與完呢個過程之後，點樣嚟改變到大家嗰種對參與社會、對於社會創新嘅觀點。而我覺得呢樣嘢咧係嗰個最大嘅延續啊，對我嚟講。咁而亦都係因為咁咧，其實對我嚟講係唔會完嘅，因為改變人同埋人同人之間嘅關係咧係永遠不斷去繼續嘅。咁好快回應一下最後嗰個關於我都係好 agree Benjamin 嗰個 point 嘅。咁而我覺得另外有一樣好重要嘅位咧，係 expectation management。當我哋去記錄對方嘅故事嘅時候，其實佢哋期望個記錄嘅結果係啲咩咧？佢哋點解願意俾我哋記錄咧？即係由抱住尊重嘅心嘅時候，咁清晰大家之間嘅嗰個期望咧，呢樣嘢都非常之重要嘅。
Thank you, Hami. And so, Louis, do you have a quick response, like to the 3 questions? The last words of response to the 3 questions we had just now is about the sustainability of social innovation and also the challenges when we document the changes. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh gosh, so many challenges, so much issues with sustainability. I will be very quick because I know we need to finish soon. The way we define social innovation at 6 is innovations that are both social in their ends and their means, by which we mean it's not just the impact on the social challenge that we're trying to create at the end, but the means is the process is innovative itself, and the process should be collaborative. It should help change people's behaviors. It should help change people's attitudes. It should help change the way that people work. And actually, sometimes we spend more time on the the process being innovative and different than actually necessarily being able to solve or tackle the social challenge. Had we done that effectively, the world would look a very different place. But I think the idea that you can help people work in a different way is really important. And so in terms of sustainability, it actually links to the conversation that was had in the last session around behavioural insights as well, is if we can change people's behaviours along the way and the way they work, and in particular, I know it's a very big buzzword generally in the world at the moment, and it's very core to the work of social labs, and actually Benjamin's work is that co-creation. By doing things with communities, there's a quite well-known organisation in the social innovation field called In With For, which is doing things within communities and with them, not just for them or at them or to them. If we can change the way that we work with people, it kind of embeds the sustainability in the first place. And the sustainability, therefore, becomes a sustainability of the way of doing things, a different kind of approach and way of working, rather than a sustainability of, is my idea going to last forever? Which I think lasts to this other question over here, which is about, innovations don't need to be innovations forever. The idea is you make yourself redundant, ideally, as an innovation practitioner. We don't want to, once something becomes, once you have embedded a new way of doing things, you can then move on to the next place. Our success is that we are not needed anymore. Our success is it becomes habit, it becomes a way of doing things, and so we move on and we find another problem that we need to work on.
Thank you， 多謝晒三位。我聽到咧，我哋要去做呢個unusual connections 同唔同嘅人連結時候咧，今日好重要，即係個起步點係有啲好重要嘅價值。我哋要互相尊重啦，我哋有同理心啦，我哋都真誠地望住眼前嘅人，即係理解到佢係一個立體有唔同背景嘅人。我哋亦都容讓自己真誠咁樣展現自己，同人有真誠嘅連結。咁啊，我哋嚟到呢度啦，好多謝我哋今日三位嘅嚟自唔同背景朋友嘅分享啦，我哋俾一啲嘅掌聲佢哋。呢個掌聲都係一個鼓勵同埋一種連結。同一時間咧，我都想繼續你哋延續嘅掌聲，俾啲掌聲你哋自己，因為你哋今日咁多山友已經都踏出咗呢個安舒區，行出咗一步，攞出咗勇氣嚟連結唔同嘅人。咁啊，我哋相信咧，聽日咧都仲繼續咧，我哋會喺呢個山腳下面咧繼續去聚會，帶住今日嘅養分，帶住今日你拎到嘅呢一啲嘅一啲啟發，我哋繼續咧聽日咧去同唔同嘅山友、唔同背景嘅朋友咧去繼續建立關係嘅。期待喺呢個社會創新同埋一個社區實驗嘅路上咧，繼續同大家有唔同嘅交流同埋合作。咁啊，聽日見大家。